Welcome, educators, parents, and scholar gamers to the Academy of Esports, Episode 9. I'm your host, James O'Hagan. This is the podcast where I delve into topics surrounding education and esports. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We cannot forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals, and it is the vision of the Academy of Esports for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. So in this episode, we're going to delve into a topic that kind of got me started on looking at esports more closely beyond the game, beyond just being something that we say to kids, hey, this is really neat, let's do this in schools. We're going to look at how we connect the ISTE standards to esports. And for the uninitiated, for those of you who do not know, first off, what ISTE is. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education. So ISTE. And you can go to their website. It is ISTE.org. And what you will find on the website is that this is a professional organization mainly made up of teachers and school administrators. It is an organization that has been around in existence for many number of years, has gone through a few different iterations and name changes, and it is not an organization that I always see eye to eye with. For example, this year the conference is being held in Chicago. It is a very expensive conference. Given the location, but I had a number of issues with one of the keynote speakers that the organization picked. But given that I have disagreements with the selection and choice of a keynote speaker, that does not discount some of the other good things that ISTE has done to help push forward the use of technology in schools, and to try to do it in ways that go beyond just the sales pitch of product. They don't always succeed in doing that. The vendor hall, when you go to the ISTE conference, is enormous. But when you are at the conference and able to connect with people from all over the world, it is truly a wonderful thing. Now, the ISTE standards, there's a variety of different standards. They've got them for students, they've got them for educators, they've got them for administrators, they even have them for coaches now. And the purpose is, and I want to read this directly from their website, the purpose of the ISTE standards are a framework for students, educators, administrators, coaches, and computer science educators to rethink education and create innovative learning environments. The standards are helping educators and education leaders worldwide re-engineer schools and classrooms for digital age learning, no matter where they are on the journey to effective ed tech integration. So, in 2016, ISTE went ahead and revamped their standards for students. They do this every several years, given the changes in times and things of that nature. So in 2016, they came out with these new standards, and this was shortly after we had launched the team that I had been part of founding. We had launched the team at Rockford Public Schools in Rockford, Illinois. And looking at the standards, it was fascinating to me to see just how well esports plays into the ISTE standards for students. Again, let me reiterate what the purpose of the standard framework is. The standards are a framework for students, educators, administrators, coaches, and computer science educators to rethink education and create innovative learning environments. So that's the purpose: rethink education and create innovative learning environments. Two key things right there. So what esports is allowing us to do is definitely rethink education And it allows us also to definitely create innovative learning environments. Now, there are 7 ISTE standards for students, and I don't know in this episode, in the 30 minutes that we have here, that we are going to be able to look at every standard. In fact, when I started going through the ISTE standards, I noted that the administrator standards had been updated. And what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is I'm going to be digging into the administrator standards as well too, because there are standards that as I read them on the surface, that I believe as an administrator, esports also touches on. So it's not just going to be from the student perspective, but we're going to start from the student perspective, because this is why I do this podcast. This is why I've been doing this. In fact, I was incredibly proud this week. I have to celebrate one of my students. Well, Zack's not one of my students, but Zack is a student with which esports, to me, he's an example of being the student that the reason why I push so hard to do this, that he is the reason why. This last week, Zack and I were both part of a taping of a television show in the Milwaukee area called Racine and Me. So it focuses on the city of Racine. And I couldn't have been more proud sitting next to this student who I found I didn't know his high school graduation was on Friday night, else I would have tried to have been there for it. But I was proud to sit next to him as he described what esports meant to him, and it made everything that I had done and that he had done as an organizer as well. I mean, the student leadership was right there as well. It made everything worth the efforts. Zack, I know, is going to do great things at Robert Morris University. He did earn an esports scholarship to Robert Morris University. He's getting $6,000 a year, which is a fantastic amount of money when you're considering college. Considering that we put $22,000 up as part of a grant to get the equipment necessary to start the team at Walden High School, I figure we are now ahead, because Zack's scholarship over 4 years is worth $24,000. I even watched today, it's Sunday, as I am recording, Sunday evening, and today was the final of the League of Legends collegiate tournament. So this was to determine the national championship of League of Legends in esports. And what I loved about the tournament was that the 2 final teams, first off, the 2 final teams had scholarships. So these were varsity level scholarship teams. That's important, because over the next several years, first off, it shows that their investment is paying off, because they are being successful against their peers, number one. And number two, that the scholarship model is something that is going to, as schools become more competitive, as students look to which school they want to attend, there's going to be a need for increased scholarships for esports, for scholar gamers. So the second thing that I loved was that not only was the final teams 2 teams, and this was University of California at Irvine, which is a fairly well-known school, and the second school is Columbia College. Now, if you live around the Chicago area, there is a Columbia College, but this is not the one in Chicago, and it is not Columbia University, which is on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. This is small Columbia College in Missouri, and to get to the finals, they had to go through teams that, if you saw it on, say, a football schedule, it would be a no competition, because they defeated schools like Ohio State, and they defeated Maryland, and they defeated the University of Illinois. That to me is, I mean, you're talking about pools. I mean, Ohio State University has 90,000 students. Illinois, I believe, is around 50 to 60,000. You're talking about some very large Big Ten schools that have pools of students they can pull from. But in the case of these students, the University of California, Irvine, and Columbia College, very small schools in comparison to the Big Ten. Though Irvine is a bigger, it's a UC school, but Columbia College is very tiny, and they were able to demonstrate not only how well that they can play when given the proper resources, but what was great afterwards was they interviewed the University California Irvine team, and looking at the Scholar Gamers and listening to them speak after the tournament and talking about the balance that they have to have in their lives between their academics and then being an esports athlete, a Scholar Gamer. I do it all the time. I know as much as I prefer using the term Scholar Gamer, they have a good balance. So this is a good thing. This is a good thing for kids. This is a good thing that drives students to college, helps them find proper balance in their lives. And so I knew that between Zack's success and what I witnessed today while on streaming on Twitch was that what I am advocating for is a good thing. It's the right thing. It's the thing that all schools should be doing. And if your school is not doing it yet, I'm available to speak to anybody. My email address, my contact information can be found at taoesports.com. You can also contact me through the Racine Unified School District. My information is on our website there. But I will be happy to speak and advocate to any organization, any school district, even if you're a student. If you're a student who is listening to me right now, or a parent who says, how do I get this going in my schools? Reach out to me. I am more than happy to help have the conversation about how you get this going in your schools. So with that said, let's transition back to the ISTE standards for students, because these are some of the arguments that you as a student, or you as a parent, or you as an educator should have when you are presenting or talking about why we should do esports in schools. So again, beyond diversifying our athletic culture, beyond giving students diversifying their options that they have, the standards, like I said, we're going to get through as many of them as we can this week, and then if we need to, we will go into next week. But the first standard that's really important is the Empowered Learner Standard. And the standard reads as this: students leverage technology to take an active role in choosing, achieving, and demonstrating competency in their learning goals, informed by the learning sciences. And then it gives some indicators as to what that means. Now, when we talk about playing video games, just in general, usually people, gamers, measure their success by getting to the next level, by having those breakthroughs. A couple weeks ago, we talked with Jake Middleton about things specific to growth mindset. Even Dan Himmelstein said some of the same things, talking about growth mindset and setting personal goals. So this Empowered Learner Standard in the ISTE standards for students goes into empowering our learners to be proactive about their learning. So when we're in esports and we're a Scholar Gamer, it is important to be able to set those goals, have that growth mindset. What do I do well now? What do I need to work on? And how do I get from the point I am with what I need to work on to a point of success? So this is a core value that we want all of our students to do, not just in esports, but we want them to be able to do in all aspects of their education, in all aspects of life. Another indicator that I thought was really important to point out to the Empowered Learner Standard is students build networks and customize their learning environments in ways that support the learning environment. as a gamer trying to problem solve, as a scholar gamer trying to figure out, how do I get better at this? Students will turn to things like Twitch. They will turn to things like YouTube. They will turn to things like Twitter. They will turn to things like Instagram. They'll turn to websites. They'll turn to anything that is going to help give them the edge. They will build that network, and they will customize that network to what they want to be able to do. I even see it in my own 9-year-old son who loves to game. And when he is saddled with something that he's trying to figure out how to solve in a game, he will go and look at walkthroughs on YouTube. Mostly, he will look at gaming walkthroughs. I remember when I was a kid, and we had issues with some games where they were tough. You could always go get a magazine, a gaming magazine, and it would sometimes have a cheat code or ways to skip into different worlds. So examples being, example being, if you ever played the game Super Mario Brothers, it's 8 levels, 8 worlds, 3 levels per world, and you had to, as you moved through, play each one. There was no saving, so if you sat down to play, you had to play the entire time. But what you could do is actually skip ahead. So through jumping in certain ways, going through certain pipes, you could actually skip ahead to different worlds, so you didn't have to necessarily play all the different levels. So, but with esports and being a scholar gamer now, our scholar gamers are going to be proactive in learning and building, and they are then empowered to take that active role in choosing and achieving and demonstrating their competency through their gameplay. The second standard I want to touch on is the Digital Citizen Standard. I'll read the standard. Students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world, and they act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. This is something that I know that students, even on our team in Racine, struggle with. Toxicity is a term that is used when we talk about gaming culture sometimes, when there could be things that are said that are racist or demeaning to a competitor. Comments can be posted into certain chats that need to be moderated. It is esports. Again, the game being a medium to something more helps to create, if done well, helps to create a culture of positive digital citizenship. It is incredibly important that when you are considering building a team, that digital citizenship and perhaps a code of conduct is included in your charter for your team. So some of the indicators that can be reflected in through esports is that, for example, students cultivate and manage their digital identity and reputation and are aware of the permanence of their actions in the digital world. There have recently been esports careers ruined, and again, these are a lot of students children. I mean, we're talking about kids here. We're talking about 14 to 21-year-old people who, for whatever reason in their past or not in their past, thinking that they were in a safe space where they could say anything, do anything, and quickly found out as they gained popularity that wasn't always the case. The recent Overwatch League had a number of issues with toxicity on the team, with inappropriate comments made by a team player, I believe on the Dallas team for Overwatch. So it's important that we bring in the digital citizenship component of the ISTE standards into our esports teams. So we need not just our students but our coaches to act and model in these environments that are safe, legal, and ethical. What's also interesting is, and this isn't just about social interactions, but we also need to talk about intellectual property when we're talking about these things. Because, for example, if we get students into streaming, especially if we're talking about Twitch and we get students into streaming, they have to understand copyright. They have to understand that it's not okay to use a little intellectual property inappropriately and share that in inappropriate ways. That steals people's, especially if you're starting to monetize a Twitch account, you definitely cannot, there is no fair use of certain things if you're monetizing your account. So it is important that we respect the rights of everybody, of their intellectual property, and we try to break down and defeat these toxic cultures that are in gaming. I am always aware and concerned about toxicity in esports, and it's something that I do not, I look to make sure that if it does creep up, that it is handled appropriately. Now, if you're in schools and you're dealing with a toxic culture on your esports team, my recommendation is to work within your student code of conduct. And if you don't feel your student code of conduct is strong enough to deal with issues of online gaming, especially when you're talking about your online teams, that you address that with your student services or your principals at your schools, because that is something that can tank all the wonderful things being done right now through esports, can bring all those things down and create an environment that can create a negative backlash, I think is what I'm trying to say. We don't want to have that negative backlash. There's too many positives here. There's too many great things happening with esports. So digital citizen standard on the ISTE standards, very important. The third one and the last one I think we're going to have time to get to tonight is the knowledge constructor standard. And it reads as follows. Students critically curate a variety of resources using digital tools to construct knowledge, produce creative artifacts, and make meaningful learning experiences for themselves and others. So the part that I always pick on in this is make meaningful learning experiences. There is no better teacher for anybody than yourself. There really isn't. I mean, I can teach people how to do things, don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to, and I don't think that I'm trying to downplay the importance of teachers. I am not. But the best learner, the best teacher for somebody is themselves, because they are able to construct things in ways that are meaningful to them. Okay, so this goes right back into Learning 30. This goes back into constructionist or constructivist, if you're into the Piaget side of things, constructivist way. The constructionist way of doing things, which is more Seymour Papert style, is saying not only am I going to construct the knowledge in my mind, but I'm going to produce something that is tangible, that demonstrates that I understand what it is that I'm doing. So this knowledge constructor standard goes right into that Piaget / Papert philosophy of learning, of constructing knowledge. So, for example, some of the indicators that I feel are important to note. Students evaluate the accuracy, perspective, credibility, and relevance of information, media, data, or other resources. This goes right into, does a student know what a quality resource is? And that's something our society struggled with just in the last election. And we talked about the term fake news. Do our students understand when they're looking at materials, when they're trying to develop that growth mindset, become a better gamer? Are they able to take sources that are going to help them become a better gamer? Or are they going to look at things and be led astray? It's important that we as coaches, who may not be the best gamers in the world or the best gamers against our students, at least help them in the process of this evaluation. And if you as an educator have issues with how do I do that effectively, the person you can talk to in your school building is your librarian. Librarians are always helpful about if hopefully you have a librarian. I know that there are some schools who do not, but sorry, I have cats running back and forth here. If you heard running in the house. So it's important that you help your students evaluate that, because as they're developing those goals, those personal learning goals to become a better gamer, better scholar gamer, it's important that they know how to build. Hey, sorry, the cats are really going at it behind me, and now they're downstairs. Sorry, everybody. We also need the students. The other indicator I thought that was very important in all of this is that they curate information from digital resources using a variety of tools and methods to create collections of artifacts that demonstrate meaningful connections or conclusions. Again, using that growth mindset concept, how do we then take all these things and curate them into meaningful representations that are going to get me from point A to point B and beyond? That knowledge constructor standard, very important in all that we're doing here with esports. And again, this is the third standard, and I will make sure to post not only the links to the standards here in the show notes, but I've also wrote some blog posts in the past, starting in 2016, around these standards, and I'm going to post those as well in the show notes, so they are there. So, and then the next week, we'll go through the 4 standards that we have left. We have innovative designer, we have the computational thinker standard, the creative communicator standard, and the global collaborator standard. And you can go, like I said, into the show notes. All this will be there. And then the weeks following, we will get into the same standards, but this one's for educators in schools. So with that will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN. And while you're at it, you can also follow at TAO Esports on Twitter. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of the esports and education world. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also go through Flipboard or your favorite RSS app and follow the latest esports news and research directly impacting education, carefully curated by me. The links are right there on the TAO Esports website. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAO Esports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.